today on the Frontline Health podcast.
No, I think it goes back to kind of our mantra is take ownership of your health because there are so many things out there like the chemicals to be aware of and the drinking water that you're taking in. All these things clearly are affecting health. We've never had a time where the younger, most vibrant population that's supposed to be the most vibrant population have seen this increase in heart attacks and colorectal cancer. So the more you can do, like you just mentioned, to really start to step up and look at these things and no longer just be a bystander about your health, but take an active, involved step in your health, I think the better off we'll be as a individual and as a culture.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Frontline Health podcast by Centurion Health. My name is Evan. With me is Troy Duell. We share health news, tips, and insights to help you take ownership of your health. And today we're bringing you another round of the latest health headline highlights.
Yeah, and there are no shortage of headlines this month that kind of make you go, whoa, what in the heck is going on out there? And the first one, we'll go ahead and dive into it, really caught my attention when I read it. It says over 100 chemicals are in foods despite no regulatory review. This was based on an analysis. It said that the substances are contained in sports drinks, snack bars, cereals, and other foods and drinks sold in grocery stores. So this was done by what's called the Environmental Working Group, which is a group that goes out and is basically a consumer group that helps see what is in our food and other things that we consume. And they found 111 chemicals that are currently used in foods and beverages. And they said that these chemicals had not been reviewed by the FDA, even though those ingredients entered the food supply through what's known as GRAS, GRAS, which means generally recognized as safe. And the FDA has said that even though they have not reviewed these particular substances. And when that happens, a company can actually determine whether ingredient is particularly considered safe without even notifying the FDA, which is what a lot of individuals are saying is a loophole that needs to be closed in order to help increase the safety of our food supply. The FDA has actually begun to propose some new regulations that would require these companies to start submitting safety notices for GRAS substances. And Health Secretary Kennedy happens to be on board with that. Overall, kind of the takeaway is basically we see all these chemicals, we need to do something about it, and nobody's really doing anything to patrol those. It's being self-patrolled by the companies who are putting these ingredients in products, and there's a big concern for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to be reminded that there's so much more work left to be done. We like it when we get to share positive health headlines about, dyes being removed from food or I don't know, some of these good just good guidelines that are being made and companies deciding on their own to remove things from their food that are bad for us. But yeah, there's still so much left to be done. So much of our food is still just like it's not really food, right? It's this ultra
For sure.
processed stuff that's loaded up with chemicals and dyes and things that we were really never meant to consume. So it will be interesting to continue to see how we call out more and more of this stuff and how our lawmakers will kind of respond to that.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful, kind of along the lines of what you just said, that we'll have more and more self correction going on. I saw one article that's not in our health headlines that talked about Target is starting to remove on their own their generic forms of different cereals and other things, and they're starting to remove some of the chemicals that were there, some of the dyes, which is a huge step in the right direction. And if we can continue that progress, I think we'll be in good shape for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. You mentioned that, and then I also saw that there are some new natural food dyes that have come out recently that some food manufacturers are starting to use as well. Um, so some good things mixed in there
That's
with some
right.
things that we still need to keep an eye on. Our next headline for today, nearly 45% of colorectal cancers in US occur among people under 65, study warns. It says for the second leading cause of cancer-related death in the United States, incidence among adults below 50 is rising in every racial and ethnic group. A new American Cancer Society study reports that 45% of new colorectal cancer diagnoses in 2026 are expected to occur in people under 65, up from 27% in 1995. While overall CRC incidence has declined since the 1980s, largely due to screening and reduced smoking among older adults, rates have been rising steadily among younger populations. Among adults aged 20 to 49, incidence has increased 1 to 2% annually since the mid 1990s, accelerating to 3% per year from 2013 to 2022 across all racial and ethnic groups. Mortality trends also show a similar age divide. Death rates continue to fall among adults 65 and older, but have risen about 1% annually since 2004 in people under 50. Researchers warn that this pattern suggests a growing underlying risk in generations born after 1950, predicting that the disease burden could continue to expand as these cohorts age. Screening rates remain lower in younger eligible adults, with just 37% of those ages 45 to 49 screened in 2023, compared to 65% overall for those 45 and older. Experts are calling for increased research into causes, earlier detection, and greater public awareness of symptoms and screening recommendations. So, kind of our overall takeaway from this is that although colorectal cancer rates have declined overall, a troubling rise among younger adults is reshaping the disease landscape, making earlier screening and prevention efforts increasingly urgent. Troy, what are your thoughts around this and like why that is so interesting that the risk of this is decreasing in older individuals, but it is increasing in younger individuals. Any inkling as to, why that might be the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to nothing more than the fact that we are screening older individuals and they're going on routine checks because we knew that that was a population that was susceptible to colorectal cancer, and you have more screens and you're getting regular checkups where we have never really thought about those people under the age of 40, really under the age of 50 to even talk about colorectal cancer because it just is so rare. And it kind of makes you begin to wonder, is it the food supply that is creating this increased risk? Is it some vaccines? Who knows really what it is because we see all these things growing and increasing. And I think just reading that earlier headline makes you wonder, could that be part of the issue as well? And I think there needs to be a deeper dive in the things that we're putting into our body, whether that's medications, whether it's vaccines, whether it's our food supply. And all those things, I think, can create that issue and potentially increase these cancer rates that are there.
Well, not to share too much, but if I get diagnosed with colorectal cancer, my wife will probably say it was because sometimes I spend a little bit too much time in the bathroom.
Yes, that can definitely be an issue, but it still comes down to what you're putting in your body, not what you're letting go of your body. So
I just wonder, is that it? Is the younger generation just spending too much time on their phones, when they should
uh,
be taking care of
m-
business and getting out?
maybe that is a distinct possibility. Who knows? We'll throw it into the mix for sure. Our next headline says, and could actually lead into exactly what we talked about, but in this case, they're talking about dementia. Is nitrate levels in tap water may raise dementia risk. Where your nitrates come from may matter more than how much you take in. This was actually a Danish study that they published in Alzheimer's and Dementia Journal, and they found that nitrate levels in our drinking water may be linked to a higher risk of dementia. even at concentrations well below our current safety limits that we've set up in the US. Researchers actually followed more than 54,000 adults for 27 years and found that drinking water that contained 5 milligrams per liter of nitrate was associated with a 12 to 16% increased dementia risk compared to very low levels. Obviously, that's going to create some concern. And what they went on to look at is they found that the source of nitrate actually mattered a great deal. So if you drink this in your water or you found it in processed meat, it was associated with a greater increase of dementia risk. And then nitrates that came from vegetables appeared to actually be protective. So there are some nitrates in vegetables, and that's because those vegetables contain antioxidants and the vitamins. It's that whole food piece that we've talked about before. And in that case, it doesn't seem to be near as harmful. So again, they are stressing that this study is observational. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's causation, but it's just one more piece that we probably need to add into the mix of what we just talked about, which is younger and younger individuals being diagnosed with different forms of cancer, with different diseases and autoimmune diseases. And I think all of that should really be taken into account as we move forward with our health and this health discussion as we develop new policies to hopefully get us to better side of health.
Yeah, I'm really curious on the on what we can do on an individual level. We talk about how important it is to use water filters. How even, we've learned from some of our guests that we've had on that even the filters on our refrigerators are not enough. They wear out. So we filter our drinking water. A lot of people use the shower water filters and things like that now. Do we know if that is an effective way to kind of reduce the nitrate levels, or is that stuff still getting past the filters?
I would assume that it would, but I think it's like everything else. When we've talked to people, even if you can do just a little bit of filtration, you're going to be much better off than not doing anything at all. So don't let some of those pieces of, oh my gosh, we've got the whole world coming down on us when it comes to our drinking water. Filter out what you can, get the best filter that you can afford, and then that will help snowball into something else. And then as you get down the path, start to purchase even better filters. But I think that's the first place for us to step into, and then just those baby steps when you're talking about our health.
That's it. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
That's right.
Our next headline, the invisible damage of noise on the body. So this article argues that noise is not just an annoyance, but a widespread public health hazard that harms the body in multiple ways. Citing research and historical observations from Florence Nightingale, it explains that more than 100 million Americans are exposed to unhealthy noise levels, which are linked to lost healthy life years. Even moderate increases in environmental noise are associated with higher risks of anxiety, depression, and other chronic conditions. Noise damages health through both direct effects on the ears and indirect activation of the body's stress response. Prolonged exposure can cause irreversible hearing loss, while persistent background noise triggers stress hormones that contribute to cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, Alzheimer's disease, stroke, and infertility. Studies show measurable increases in heart disease risk, mental health disorders, and reduced birth weight with relatively small rises in decibel levels. And the problem actually extends to hospitals, workplaces, and urban environments carrying major economic and societal costs. While individuals can reduce exposure by protecting sleep environments and using ear protection, experts do emphasize that broader urban planning and public health measures are needed. So, what we hope that you'll take away from this is that noise is an invisible but powerful biological stressor that affects nearly every system in the body, making silence not a luxury, but an essential component of long-term health. Troy, I was always under the impression that the only danger of, too much noise was just hearing loss, but this is giving us insight into a lot of other issues that could be caused by that.
Yeah, I think it's really, really interesting because you're actually seeing more and more health modalities come out that have different decibels and different levels that they say actually align your cells and do different things like that. So that to me is really interesting. And then the other piece, I'm curious, white noise. They have done studies that show some white noise and brown noise are actually beneficial for you. So I would love to know, and I didn't see it anywhere in this article or anything that you mentioned, what was the type noise that was considered bad? I've always found that music oftentimes will soothe my soul and certainly make me get me into a right mindset if I'm kind of out of kilter. So I wonder if there are certain musics that tend to help. I think we probably all did the science experiment back in elementary school where you had rock music with playing for plants and you had classical music playing for plants, and the classical music plant thrived while the rock music didn't necessarily thrive. Even though I like my rock music as well. But I'm really curious, what is the noise that is damaging to people, if there are particular noises that are more damaging than others?
Yeah, I can't say that I did that experiment in elementary school to see how different types of music affected
Well,
plant
you
life.
missed out on a great opportunity.
You
You
know,
really
I didn't
did.
get that. I didn't get to dissect the frogs. Science class used to just be a lot more fun.
Yes, it definitely did. So if you get a chance now, do that with your music and see which one thrives, and you'll know just exactly what I'm talking about.
I
So
might,
good
I might
opportunity for you.
Hey,
Yes.
I might try it. But kind of back to this article just for a second. One of the things that I think is really relevant that is also in the news right now is, these data centers that are popping up in a lot of rural places, places where people that I'm close to are living, where there are talks of things of data centers being built there, and hearing stories out of places where there are already data centers that have been built. People are complaining about a lot of this stuff. Not just like the loud noises and the hearing loss and that kind of thing, but mental health concerns and impacting their sleep quality, which we know affects so many different aspects of someone's health. So um, I don't know. I think this is something we really need to pay attention to, especially as we have more of a demand to build things in areas where people are living that produce a lot of noise.
Absolutely. Um, eh, I'm, I don't know how much noise a data center makes, but that would be interesting to find out too, if it's just the regular construction noise that coming into a rural setting that is the issue, or if the data center itself is an issue. But all things to at least be aware of, and thought it was a great headline. So thanks for sharing that. Our final headline for today is increasing number of Americans under 55 dying of severe heart attacks, study finds. The number of adults aged 18 to 54 who died of a severe heart attack in the hospital rose by 57% between 2011 and 2022, which is, again, one of those things that we've already talked about. What is it in our culture that is growing this? But the article goes on to talk about how the American Heart Association did a study and they found this sharp rise in severe first heart attacks among Americans aged 18 to 54, with in-hospital deaths increasing 57%. The analysis reviewed almost a million people, or a million U.S. hospitalizations, and found that while most patients were men, women had higher in-hospital death rates. About 3.1% of hospitalized women died compared to just 2.6% of men. The study did note that tobacco use was the most common traditional risk factor. The income level was also a prevalent non-traditional risk factor, and that younger women were more likely than men to have non-traditional risk factors, which were associated with higher mortality. The researchers emphasized that the heart attack deaths had previously declined overall, but those improvements, again, just like the earlier article we talked about, were driven by older adults and men and not younger adults. So experts based on this article, warned that heart attacks aren't just a problem any longer for older individuals, as younger adults, especially women, are facing an increased risk. So we need to be certainly aware that it is no longer just if you're young, you're going to be vibrant and there are no health issues there. I think we're at a stage where we need to be paying attention to our health no matter what age we are. And the earlier we take ownership of our health, I think the better off we'll be. What is your thought based on hearing that as somebody who is under 55 and in that range where it wasn't ever even a passing thought in years past?
I mean, I just think it's really sad because, you're talking about the American Heart Association. February was American Heart Health Month, and one of the phrases that I saw used is that this is really one of the most preventable health crises that we face, heart disease, right? You talk about those things like tobacco use that are risk factors. I'd have to imagine in some of these low income circumstances probably not having access to good food and probably caloric density and obesity is playing into this. So I just think it's really sad, that younger people are experiencing this kind of thing and are not taking their health seriously because in large part, heart disease is preventable. There's a whole lot that we can do to kind of get ahead of this and just really, thrive in a time of life when our bodies are supposed to be thriving. So, regardless of what your predispositions are, I have a family history of heart disease, and it's something that I try to be proactive about. I run. I try to eat well, try to get good sleep and do all the things that I'm supposed to do. And so I would just encourage anyone out there listening who hears this to really take your heart health seriously and understand that there are a whole lot of things you can do to get ahead of it and prevent it and thrive during the seasons of life that you're supposed to thrive.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So well done. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you for sharing this, Troy. I think we're getting ready to land the plane. Is there anything else that you want to say, just to put a bow on all of these headlines that we've shared today?
No, I think it goes back to kind of our mantra is take ownership of your health because there are so many things out there like the chemicals to be aware of and the drinking water that you're taking in. All these things clearly are affecting health. We've never had a time where the younger, most vibrant population that's supposed to be the most vibrant population have seen this increase in heart attacks and colorectal cancer. So the more you can do, like you just mentioned, to really start to step up and look at these things and no longer just be a bystander about your health, but take an active, involved step in your health, I think the better off we'll be as a individual and as a culture.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us today, Troy. It is always a pleasure, and thank you for everyone listening so much for tuning into this episode of the Frontline Health Podcast by Centurion Health. Like we've been talking about on this episode, figure out those things that you can do to really take ownership of your health. You are your best health advocate, and we will see you next time on the Frontline Health Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard today on the podcast, please consider subscribing and leaving us a review. We would love to hear your comments or questions about anything we've talked about on the show. For more health news, tips, and insights, follow us at Centurion Health on Instagram, Facebook, X, and YouTube. And for safe, effective, and affordable healthcare products made in the USA to help you elevate your health and life, visit centurion.health. We look forward to you joining us next time on the Frontline Health Podcast by Centurion.